All right, YouTube, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. It is Thursday, September 28th. We got a decent-sized MLB slate to jump into in today's video. Like we always do, we're going to go through each and every game. We're going to talk about the games. I'm going to give you my lean or leans on the games. But as always, all of my final plays, what I'm actually going to be rolling with myself, if you do want to fade me or if you want to ride with me, those will be in the pinned comment. In terms of last night, not a great night to fade me. We got to sweep. We want to pull the trigger. We want to pull the trigger on the money gun. A 3-0 night deserves a money gun. But I'm man enough to admit 2 nights ago we went 0-2. So technically over our last 5, we're just above, break even, right? 3-2. So I'm tempted, and that happened once before. I'm tempted to pull the trigger, but we're going to suppress the money gun. Just know that it's here. It's hot. I'm looking down the barrel. It's ready to go. Let's go and sweep again tonight. But Brewers come through, Rangers come through, and then the Padres battle back, and they win as well. A 3-0 night, and our ride of the day comes through. Let's pump in some crowd noise. We got Trace Thompson over 0.5 bases. That came in from Rose. It cashed with ease, and we're back on the win streak for the ride of the day. Shout out to Rose. If you guys do want to be the ride of the day, all you got to use is hashtag ride of the day in the comments and give me an absolute banger of a play. And I'm going to be picking one person's pick, jumping on board with you, putting my money where your mouth is, trusting you guys, jumping on board, and then you get a shout out in the next video, win or loss. If you win, we celebrate. You hear the cha-ching, you get the crowd noise, the cheers. If you lose, you might have to face the womp-womp. So, yeah, enter, I guess, at your own risk there. But, yeah, back on the win train for the ride of the day. And then our 3-0 night, pretty damn good. A nice little sweep there. And like I said, we do have a decent MLB slate to get into today. I think it's like 11 games or so. But before we do that, I want to talk to you about Sleeper, guys. Yesterday was Wednesday. Today's Thursday. They dropped a late night promo for Thursday Night Football. They've knocked Sam Laporte's receiving yards line down to 3.5. That's a 23% discount. If you have not checked out Sleeper yet, you can use my link in the pinned comment. You get 100% of your first deposit matched. I love Sleeper, my favorite DFS pick'em app out there right now. Love bouncing between them and Prize Picks, but what makes Sleeper unique is the dynamic payout multiplier. So each and every pick, like this Laporta card and Laporta square that you'll put in your slip, has its own multiplier. It doesn't follow a fixed payout structure. You can win up to 100 times over on Sleeper, which is really, really cool. Just go check it out. If it's legal in your state and you're not on Sleeper, I do think you are asleep and you're missing out on this. And what better time to do it than Thursday Night Football with a promo square over there and the knockdown discounted line. Go check out Sleeper. Again, my link can get you 100% of your first deposit match. That's going to be in the pinned comment. Now let's go ahead and jump into game number 1 here. It's not the best of slate. We talked about a few of these games yesterday, a few of these series, but nonetheless, we do have Minnesota taking on Oakland here. Like I said, this isn't one of the best matchups. Minnesota has actually won 9 of the last 10 against Oakland. No surprise there. They've already won the 2 games so far in the series. This is the series finale. Minnesota's pitching Sonny Gray, going up against Luis Medina for the Oakland A's. I do think Minnesota, there's some value on the run line. They've obviously covered that 2 games straight right now, and I don't really think Oakland's that team that you're like, oh, well, they're hard to sweep, right? Like, no, this is a team that most likely has given up on baseball. And we're in a weird place with, just a few games left in the regular season where bad teams may be giving up or they're trying young talent, right? And then good teams, it's like they might be sitting guys. They might not want guys to get hurt before the All-Star break, so on and so, or All-Star break. My brain's everywhere this morning. Before the playoffs, right? So it's almost like you got to keep a close eye on it. Don't be too aggressive with these end-of-season bets. For example, if Minnesota, we take them on the run line, and they're like, okay, a couple of our bats, let's chill for today and that type of thing. It's like, what the hell? Now all of a sudden you've got a team that you thought was this, division winner playoff team playing against Minnesota, and they're not exactly, full strength. So just keep an eye on injury reports and everything like that. Baseball's tricky to bet down the stretch like this. Once playoff comes, we'll know all the best guys are playing, yada, yada, yada. But right now we do have, I guess you could say, a few days of questionability here. So just keep an eye on that. The total in this game is sitting at 8.5. I don't mind the over just because we've seen Minnesota, the bats completely torching so far. 11 runs and 6 runs. I think they carry their weight again today. Will Oakland? Not exactly sure. But still, nonetheless, 8.5. You're not asking too much. All right, next game up, we're looking at the White Sox taking on the Diamondbacks. So far, Diamondbacks have dominated the series, and they've won 10 straight against this White Sox team. White Sox pitching Touki Toussaint, going up against Bryce Jarvis, who I personally, to be transparent, don't know much about for the Arizona Diamondbacks here. But nonetheless, I still think that the lean should go towards Arizona here. The only credence I would give anyone on the White Sox is like the White Sox are due to at least compete/beat this Diamondbacks team, but that's not really an analytical or broken down way of sports betting, but it definitely happens. Sometimes there's the big old gut check, right? And there's big old gut saying there's a chance that the White Sox at some point have to beat this Diamondbacks team, but with everything we have in front of us, I don't necessarily think it's today. If regardless of who's pitching for Arizona, Touki Toussaint I don't think is going to be the guy to really pull the White Sox out from underneath the Diamondbacks here. He's had a couple good starts in a row, but it was okay starts is as far as I'd go. Prior to that, he was very, very inconsistent. So I'll still take the Diamondbacks here. The odds right now, these are just like the opening lines. The odds, I think, are -162 or so, but these odds are bouncing all over the place, and I have a feeling it has to do with Arizona pitching. Total sitting at 9 runs here. I don't mind looking at the under in this spot. I think both these teams kind of want to just get out of Dodge. They might want to sleepwalk through this game, and maybe even saying that, right, the under, maybe that helps the White Sox in this case because they are able to go out there and kind of like maybe compete with the Diamondbacks, who don't really care all that much. But nonetheless, guys, like I said, there's plenty of spots in today's slate that just aren't the sexiest of games and matchups, and that's okay in sports betting. It's okay to be like, you know what? I don't need to bet on this White Sox and Diamondbacks game, right? So I doubt anything becomes a final play in this spot. And speaking of non-sexy, we have the Detroit Tigers taking on Kansas City here. Kansas City, slight underdogs, barely though. In terms of the odds you're getting, -110 on DraftKings for Detroit, -104 for Kansas City. I think Kansas City is pulling one over our eyes here because they have won 8 of their last 10. They've whooped up on Houston. They swept Cleveland. Detroit takes game 1 a couple days ago in this series. Cole Ragans on the mound for Kansas City today. He's actually like, the guy might be a good pitcher. Like as far as I'll go is good because he still is on the Royals. He's going up against Sawyer Gibson Long, who has looked okay, but I don't really trust as far as I could throw him, and it seems like I could throw him pretty far. But he only has a few starts on the season. I'm going to lean towards the pitcher that I like a lot more, and that is going to be Ragans here. He's got a 1.8 ERA over his last 5. The team's 3-2 when he does pitch. And in terms of batting, it's not like this Detroit team has the serious bats. Like they are batting slightly better than Kansas City in their last 5, but if you look at it from a last 10 perspective, Detroit versus lefties, 235 average. Kansas City versus righties in their last 10, 237 average. Detroit actually has a worse on-base percentage, which we like to see, 291 compared to 316. So I don't think this is going to be a very good game, but I do think that the Royals may be able to even up and knot up the series here. Yesterday's game was postponed too. The total sitting at 7.5. I think you can actually get it at 7 over on FanDuel for decent, like -115-ish odds. So I don't hate that at all. I think that these are two teams that could, go out there and do 4-3, which would push that line fairly easily. So I'll take the over. It just seems way too low to kind of pass up, but I don't know how confident I am in terms of final play-esque for either of these picks. I do like Ragans, but I know the minute I start to be like, all right, I'm a Ragans guy and whatnot, they're going to lose. Like, I just feel like I have that kiss of death because we have not bet Kansas City on the money line all year long. If you have, you're an absolute psycho. The minute we do, it's probably like this guy, this good pitcher turns to crap. But we'll see, guys. Keep an eye on that pinned comment. So far, 3 games into the slate, nothing really tickling the fancy so far. But if you really want your fancy tickled, make sure you guys head over to the Fade Me store, fademe.store, and pick up some merch. Support what we're doing here. We have the hoodies. We have the Fadecation collection, perfect for vacation, day drinking. In terms of some of the deals that we have on the site right now, we're still offering 30% off all t-shirts. So any of the t-shirts you see here, like the Don't Be a Guppy tee, you guys can get 30% off by using code 30K. So 30K. It's to celebrate our 30,000 subscriber achievement. That was one of the initial promos. We've kept it around for a couple days now as well. So use 30K. This is the last day you can use that code to get 30% off. So if you do want to check out the Fade Me store, again, it's fademe.store. All this will be in the pinned comment. You can use code 30K and you guys will get 30% off all t-shirts. Only t-shirts on the site, but 30% off. I think you can get it for like 17 bucks. So you want to pick up a $17 t-shirt, go do it today. Last day to get that deal. Let's get back to the slate here. All right, Milwaukee taking on St. Louis. Milwaukee, one of the teams that cashed for us yesterday. Unfortunately, their odds are way up there at -190 on the money line. So, yeah, I don't think that's going to get it done for us today. They do have Corbin Burns, who has 2 shutout games in his last 3, going up against Dakota Hudson, who I've talked about before. I really don't trust him as a pitcher, like whatsoever. He's had his decent nights, but like that's as good as it gets for him. It at least seems as of late. He has had some success. His last start, albeit it was 3+ years ago against Milwaukee, was 6 2/3 pitch, 0 earned runs, 7 strikeouts. But again, way long ago. I'll take Milwaukee on the money line, but unfortunately, it's got to be in some sort of a parlay, just because we're looking at such tough odds in terms of a singles bet. In terms of the total, a lot of books have it at 7.5. You can get it over on FanDuel at 8 right now, and I think that that's the spot that I'm looking for. I think that these offenses aren't really that great. We saw so far in this series a 4-1 game and a 3-2 game, and Milwaukee's already clinched. They have their spot. I don't know if they're going to really eagerly go into this game trying to score a bunch of runs. They might coast for the last game here in the series, and then for the Seattle side of things, in their last 5 games here, going up against righties, batting just 186 for average here, only 4.8 hits per 9, 3.5 runs per 9, and extra base hits only averaging 0.6 extra base hits per 9. So not exactly what we'd like to see out of an offense, but what you want to see when you're looking at under. So I'll lean towards the under 8. I wish it was 8.5 because I feel like it's such a better number to grab, but nonetheless, under 8, probably so far out of the 4 games we've covered, probably the most likely final play, because I do think this is a spot in which both teams have a reason to not really, aggressively try and score runs. And I know that triggers the guppies being like, no, they always want to score runs. It's like, you wish that were the case. You wish sports were that, like, that put on a pedestal. Like, there's plenty of games where guys just want to get it over with because they're doing this every single day. The game doesn't matter anymore. Like, they're humans too. I'm not saying it happens as much as, you and I would go out there and be like, all right, let's get this one over with, right? In like a beer league or something like that. But there's definitely games, and we've seen it so far this season, where, end of a series, now it's getting nearing the end of the season, not much to play for if you're not making the playoffs. And if you're already in the playoffs, you don't want to overdo it and get guys hurt. There is a little credence to the idea of let's just get through this game. So we'll see if this becomes a final play, but I just want to say that there is a little bit of, like, whether it's this game or not, there is going to be games now at the end of the year where they just kind of don't have the same intensity and same care, and that drastically impacts outcomes. All right, Phillies taking on Pittsburgh here. So far, in terms of what we have for projections, it's supposed to be Zach Wheeler taking on Luis Ortiz. We don't have any lines on this game, which is interesting because we do have the pitching. So depending on what the lines come out at, I do like the Phillies. They've taken the first 2 in this series, 3-2, and then 7-6. Close game. So if you are on looking at that Pirates run line, yeah, they've kept both of these games close. So I don't hate that at all. But I do think Philly is just a better hitting team. They've kind of showed that they can just edge out this Pittsburgh team. If you want to break it down, last 10, last 5, the Phillies don't look as incredible as I'm making it seem, but just overall in the season, they are a better offense, like a 25-point advantage in terms of batting average. So I'll take the Phillies here. If the total comes out anywhere around 7.5, like it has been 7.5, and I think yesterday was 8, I'll take a peek at the over as well. The only thing that throws a wrench into that is that I do like Zach Wheeler. I talk about it all the channel, underrated pitcher, but he hasn't been all that special. So if he lets up 3 runs through 6, I do think that this over has a chance if it's anywhere around 7.5 again. But keep an eye on the pin comments, see what we roll with there. I feel like I've said keep an eye on the pin comment 20,000 times, but we're in the dog days of MLB season, guys. I'm not as confident in any of these games right now as I would be if we had the vibe of mid-season, and that's I'm sure a lot of people on this platform giving picks wouldn't admit that, but I say fade me. I'm keeping it transparent. Some of these games just aren't as good as they could be even just a week ago if these were the series. All right, next up we have Baltimore taking on Boston. But first, if you're still watching, comment 14, and then I have a question for you guys here. We got it from yesterday's video. I asked you guys to drop some questions. Do the same thing if you do have some future questions you want asked in the video. But I like this one. What is the best playoff sport. For me, and I'm going to sound like such a casual fan doing this, I love playoff hockey. You know, I watch hockey throughout the regular season, not with the intensity that I do, you know, NBA, NFL, or MLB, but hockey, playoff hockey, there's something about living and dying in the moment. Like every shot, every save, it's like breathtaking, right? So I think that mine, in terms of, you know, again, you got to kind of put it in a vacuum. It doesn't matter what your favorite sport is or anything like that. Like, you got to look at it from a perspective of what in its core, in a vacuum, is just the most intense, the best playoff sport. And for me, I don't think that there's anything like playoff hockey. I know a lot of people agree. It's not like a jaw-dropping take, right? I think a lot of people are like, playoff hockey's great. I'm just one of the people that agree with that. So let me know in the comments, and drop 14 if you made it to this point, but let me know your favorite playoff sport, or at least what you think is the best playoff sport. Let me know in the comments. Now let's get to this game. We have Baltimore taking on Boston here. Baltimore, another team that, you know, maybe they don't need to go out there and really try and cram and get wins in here, but at the same time, they are playing Boston. There's a little bit of a divisional rivalry there. Chris Sale going against Baltimore here. Dean Kramer on the mound. I like Baltimore. The odds indicate that, you know, this should be a closer game than I would think. They're only -120 over on DraftKings right now. They are the better team. Maybe they're not going to be at 100%. Maybe they don't have their full strength here, something that I'm not aware of. But obviously, we'll look into that before making it a final play. But I still think that Baltimore is the better team. As much as I want to say Chris Sale's the better pitcher, he's looked good as of late, but I do think Dean Kramer has just been kind of steady, and he's almost fallen off in the last couple games, which tells me this is his ramp-up game going into the playoffs. So give me Baltimore on the money line. Total sitting at 7. It just seems a little too low. Again, like, all these numbers are super low, but am I taking the bait, or are we 5-head thinking? You know what I mean? Like, am I ahead of it, or is Vegas going, yeah, Ev, come on, keep taking these low totals. They're going to be a super low scoring game. I'm not necessarily sure. So I will go ahead and take the over as well in this spot. So give me Baltimore and the over. All right, we have Toronto taking on the Yankees here. Chris Bassett on the mound for Toronto. He's got a 2-flat ERA over his last 5 here. Over his last 5, he's averaging 5.2 strikeouts as well. See, I do read the comments, guys. There was a comment yesterday being like, can you mention how many strikeouts the pitcher's averaging over the last few games? And we could start doing that, certainly, as much as it matters, right? Like, I'm not just going to do it to do it. If it impacts the game, I do think it's going to impact the game. You know what I mean? If it really matters for this matchup, like if we're facing a high strikeout team, I do think it matters. So we'll do that more and more, guys. Any recommendations, I'm an open book, looking for criticism, and constructive criticism, I should say. But Luke Weaver's going for the Yankees here. In terms of what he's looking at, you know, he's pitched okay. 2.2 ERA over his last 5 starts here. In his last 3, it doesn't look as great. He's got a 4.15 ERA with a 1.31 WHIP, and just honestly, truth be told, Toronto kind of needs to start winning games here. Like, they are in a pretty good spot. All they have to do is not crap the bed, and they're looking at their playoff spot, obviously, but they're only like, what, I think it's like a half game up of Houston, meaning they're like a half game, maybe game and a half. Like, there's probably not enough time for Seattle to actually catch them, but they do need to start kind of securing their spot in the playoffs, if you will. Like I said, it's kind of late in the season to, you know, all they have to do is play meh, and they'll be all right. But if they just keep losing, like they've already dropped 2 in this series against New York Yankees, all of a sudden it could be a collapse. So the way that works out, like I said, is just Seattle is only like a game or a game and a half back. But again, it's probably going to take a little bit too much, as they're not playing each other, to try and catch them as aggressively. But nonetheless, give me Toronto. I do think that they do have to score here too. They've had 2 straight games of 0 runs. Like, what are we doing here, right? So they'll go out there and score today. Total sitting at 8.5. I think this is a spot in which more runs are scored than we've seen in the series so far. Yesterday, the Yankees did their job in terms of carrying the weight for an over. They scored 6 runs, but again, Toronto, 2 straight games of 0 runs. I can't imagine that continues to happen as they're closing out the season. So give me the over in this spot, as well as Toronto on the money line. Toronto is heavily juiced for reasons that I've already mentioned. Like, this is kind of like let's start winning baseball games here. Hey, what do you say, Canada? For Toronto. All right, so we'll see where it goes. But I like the over in this spot. That actually probably is a heavier lean than even Toronto on the money line, to be honest. All right, Mets taking on the Marlins. They split the doubleheader yesterday. Mets win 11-2 in game number 1, and then the Marlins win 4-2 in game number 2. Jesus Luzardo on the mound for the Marlins. Today he's got a 2.2 ERA over his last 5, averaging over 6 strikeouts in his last 5 starts as well. Going up against David Peterson, who he's back to letting up a bunch of runs, but he's striking plenty of guys out as well. I think it's going to come down to the offense, and I'm going to go with Miami, who, both these pitchers are lefties. Miami batting lefties a lot better than they do, or than the Mets do as of late. In their last 10, 265 average with a 347 on base percentage. So the pitching, I think, is kind of a net wash. Peterson's been pitching better than normal, but he started to slide back to crappiness like he was, I would say a month and a half ago. So I'm hoping that, that continues. Miami can put up a decent amount of runs, because I like Miami's team total in this game also as of right now. And you can get that right now in terms of the runs scored for them. If you want to look at best odds right now, I would say over 3.5 minus 125-ish. Over 4 is plus 114. You get that over on BetMGM and Caesars. So I think that they do score that amount today. If you look at them head to head, they've 3 of their last 4 games against this Mets team, they have scored at least 4 runs. So give me Miami as well as a consideration on their team total, because I think David Peterson is starting to slide a little bit back to who he actually is. I should also mention too, because now looking at this game, it reminds me that the Cubs, who we're about to talk about, and Miami are tied for that last wild card spot in the NL right now. So these games do matter to those 2 teams. But yeah, with that being said, let's move into the Cubs taking on the Braves here. We didn't have odds. We did have odds at the time of recording. Those odds I'm not seeing anywhere now. But anyways, we'll treat them like they haven't been stripped away. But Atlanta minus 148 on the money line. They have no starter named, which is why I'm thinking that I'm seeing these odds disappear and come back and disappear. But for the Cubs here, they are plus 124 on the road with Marcus Stroman on the mound. He has not been great. We've seen that this season. He's got a 4.2 ERA in his last 5, which honestly, you could even make the argument that that's an upgrade in terms of being more consistent. But in his last 3, it's bad. 15.33 ERA with a 2.68 WHIP. And you're probably like, oh, well, he played a bunch of good teams in his last 5, right? Wrong. His last 5 starts. Now, obviously, he was gone for a little while, or out for a little while, but Colorado, Cincinnati, Chicago White Sox, the St. Louis Cardinals, and the Boston Red Sox. Those are the last 5 teams he's played, and he's still just absolutely not pitching well. And like I said, the last 3, Colorado, Cincinnati, and the White Sox, he's got a 15+ ERA in those games. So it is tough to see. His last start back after coming back, only 3 innings pitched, 3 earned runs, 2 strikeouts. Not the best. I think I have to side with Atlanta in this spot. They are just a better team. But the one credence I'll give to the side of, if you guys are out there betting the Cubs, is that are the Cubs really about to get swept in a crucial part of the season for them? It's either win or go home type of vibe right now. Are they really about to get swept in this spot, or can they sack up one last time? If you believe in that narrative that they can fight, hungry dog runs faster, they want this game more than Atlanta does, yeah, maybe that is some reasoning and rationale to bet the Cubs. But from what I'm looking at, I can't trust Stroman. The Cubs have played decent baseball. Like, their offense is playing well, but they're going up against the best team in the league. Like, that's a tough spot. So I'll take Atlanta on the money line. I want the Cubs to win in a sense, because I think these baseball, like these last week or so of baseball and then going into the playoffs, I think we're going to have some seriously intense and enjoyable baseball that we haven't had in a long time. Like, I think these playoffs, especially the AL, that playoff, those playoffs are going to be stacked with teams that can all beat each other. Going to be very interesting and good for the sport as well. But give me Atlanta here. In terms of the total, it was at 9.5. Again, still seeing that on some books, but it's like flickering. It must be because Atlanta is, thinking about a pitcher and dropping it, whatever it is. Whatever the reason is, if it is 9.5, I don't mind the over here, because Chicago's going to need to score runs. You can't just suppress Atlanta's offense, right? And if you do, then wow, there's a shooting comet through the sky. So they're going to know going into this game that the way they beat Atlanta is, sure, tempering them, but tempering the offense is still like a minimum of 5 runs from Atlanta, right? And if the Cubs are going to win and Atlanta's going to score 5, they're going to have to score more than 5 runs. So I'll take the over 9.5 in this spot as well. And that's honestly a good play, because it gives me sort of the rooting for the Cubs interest, while also knowing that Atlanta could score a bunch of runs. So maybe that ends up being a final play over Atlanta on the money line. And we don't know who's pitching for Atlanta yet, so that's also a caveat to throw in. All right, this game doesn't totally interest us. We have Colorado taking on the Dodgers. No odds yet. Probable pitchers are Ryan Yarbrough for the Dodgers and then Chris Flexen for Colorado. I do think that the Dodgers go out there and win this game, but they're going to be juiced again. They've won the two straight in this series right now. This is game number 4, but they've been minus 200 or beyond in each game. So I'm going to lean towards them. I also will probably take a peek at the under because that's cashed 2 of the 3 games so far. And you guys know how I feel in my theory about Colorado totals. And if you don't, I like unders for Colorado when they're at home because those numbers are super juiced and they're just not a good baseball team. So the only caveat there, I feel like I've said caveat a bunch, is the Dodgers are a good baseball team and they could score a bunch of runs. So nonetheless, I don't think anything in this game becomes a final play, to be completely honest. So it doesn't really matter that we don't have the updated odds or anything. All right, Seattle taking on Texas. Seattle, big spot for them. They go down now in the that wild card race. They're a game and a half back from Houston, 2.5 back, or Houston's 2.5 back from the Texas Rangers here. So I'm trying to think. I don't think Seattle can technically catch even with a sweep. I don't believe they can catch Texas if I'm not mistaken, right? But is it a 4-game series? It might be. So not that I think that's going to happen, but this is a spot in which the division could be sort of up for grabs. If Seattle goes out there and sweeps Texas, there's a chance that if Houston sweeps as well, Houston can leapfrog them and take the division crown, if I'm not mistaken. I could have the math wrong here, but this is going to be a series that means a lot for both teams. Seattle, they probably feel like they're not in it anymore, which again, they're kind of rooting against Texas in their series. I think they're going and playing Washington or something, some cake team, right? But nonetheless, I think Texas is really going to go into this thinking, okay, we got to at least stand our ground and win some games here. So give me Texas in game number 1 here. I wish I wish that they had a better pitcher going, Jordan Montgomery. He's looked good, but I don't know if I can truly trust him. The one trustworthy thing is he had a good outing, 7 innings pitched, only 5 hits, 0 earned runs, 6 Ks, averaging under 15 pitches per inning in his last start, which is 5 days ago against the Seattle team. So hopefully he does that again, because I do think this is a series in which, yes, Seattle's still clawing, yes, Seattle's going to still be fighting, but Texas really should want to stand their ground and remain the top of that AL West. In terms of batting too, Texas batting .276 against righties in their last 5, .354 on base percentage with a 6.1 run per 9 rate. Seattle struggling against lefties in their last 5. Jordan Montgomery is a lefty. They're batting sub 200 at 196 for average and a 318 on base percentage, which I would never really tip my nose at. Anything over 300 I think is all right, but 3 runs per 9, only 2.8 hits against lefties, so not all that great. And like I said, Jordan Montgomery, I don't trust the pitcher, but I do have to give him credit for .43 ERA in his last 3 starts and a .81 whip. So I think he's kind of getting hot at the right time. And then Logan Gilbert on the mound for Seattle has been kind of erratic as of late. So I'll take Texas in this spot. The total sitting at 7.5. You got to look at Texas's offense. They've been giving you, 4 or 5 runs when they just played in that last series, which was a 3-game series, 8-5, 2-0, 9-8. 2 of the 3 were over games. I'm going to lean towards the over 7.5 here because I do believe in Texas's offense, and hopefully, as bad as the Seattle stats I just mentioned, maybe they kind of turn it up given the implications of this series. So I'll go ahead and lean towards Texas here on the money line. By the way, they're underdogs too, because which they're on the road, kind of closing out the season. So I like the value we're getting. I should have mentioned that off the top. Plus 105 over on Caesar. So plus money for a team that I think is better all around today. And then in terms of a total 7.5, I do like the over as well. You can get that at FanDuel minus 108. And guys, that's going to wrap it up for today's video. If you did enjoy it, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys very, very much for watching. Make sure you did comment 14 if you heard that and drop your favorite sport for the playoffs. And yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next one. All right, make sure to check out Head to Head, which comes out at noon today. We have our Thursday night football video as well. College football dropped yesterday, tons of content. I don't know if I'm gonna have bags under my eyes pretty damn soon because we're pumping out the content, guys. We're not stopping. I love this game. I love doing it. I love the grind, and I love the reaction and the community we're building. So as much and or as little sleep as I'm getting, it's all worth it in my brain. We're not burnt out. We're not gonna burn out, anything like that. We have a lot going on, which I'll talk about at some point, I'm sure. But right now, loving the channel, loving the growth, and thank you guys very much for the opportunity and everything like that. So yeah, without further ado, before I start getting sappy, we'll turn in for the day. I'll catch you guys in the next video. All right, peace out.